She stood at my father's funeral, straightening her black dress and checking her watch like she had somewhere more important to be. While I sobbed over his casket, she whispered to her sister about replanting the azaleas. That should have been my first warning. But it took 23 years, 2 failed pregnancies, and watching her choose landscaping over my newborn daughter to finally understand the truth. Some mothers don't mother. They perform. And when the performance ends, you realize you were never the star of their show. What I discovered next changed everything. I spent most of my childhood believing my mother, Patricia Hawthorne, was simply different. While other mothers packed elaborate lunches and attended every soccer game, mine sent me to school with a crisp $20 bill and instructions to figure it out. She wasn't cruel. She was efficient. Patricia had this way of making neglect look intentional. Like her absence was actually a gift she was giving me. Independence, she called it. Character building, our house in Westchester was her masterpiece. Every corner photographed for lifestyle magazines, every surface gleaming with the kind of perfection that required someone else's hands to maintain. She employed a rotating cast of housekeepers, landscapers, and personal assistants who knew her preferences better than I did, but her garden. That was where she came alive. She could spend 6 hours deadheading roses without breaking a sweat, orchestrating flower bed rotations like military campaigns. The garden parties she hosted were legendary among her social circle. Politicians, celebrities, old money families, they all came to admire what she'd built. I was allowed to attend these gatherings, but only if I stayed quiet and looked presentable. A living accessory to her curated world. When I turned 16, I started working summers at the local nursery. I thought maybe we could bond over plants. I brought home exotic seedlings and carefully researched companion planting techniques. She accepted my offerings with polite interest, then promptly handed them to the groundskeeper to handle properly. Gardens require vision, Charlotte, she'd say, adjusting her wide-brimmed hat. Not impulse. I told myself she was teaching me patience. Standards. The importance of doing things right. When I graduated valedictorian from high school, she threw a small dinner party to celebrate. But the conversation centered on her upcoming garden tour. Feature in Better Homes and Gardens, not my acceptance to Columbia. The photographer would be coming the following week, and she needed everything perfect. College became my escape. 4 hours away in the city, I could breathe without worrying about disrupting her carefully maintained aesthetic. I studied psychology. Fascinated by family dynamics and the invisible wounds that shape us. I met David during my senior year. He was studying medicine, driven and kind with an easy laugh that made everything feel lighter. When I brought him home for Easter dinner, Patricia was gracious but distant. She complimented his manners and asked polite questions about his family's background. Later, as we walked through her prize-winning garden, she made a comment that stuck with me. He seems steady, she said, deadheading a peony. Stability is underrated in young people today. It wasn't exactly maternal enthusiasm, but from Patricia, it felt like approval. We married 2 years later in a ceremony that was, predictably, more about the venue than the vows. Patricia transformed the country club's garden terrace into something that belonged on magazine covers. White roses cascaded from hand-carved arbors, and the reception tables were works of art. The local paper ran a feature titled Hawthorne Garden Wedding Sets New Standard for Elegance. I was mentioned in the caption as the bride. David and I settled into a brownstone in Brooklyn. Patricia visited twice, once to critique our plant choices on the front stoop, and once to survey the small herb garden I'd started in the back. She left both times with a list of suggestions that felt more like corrections. When I got pregnant at 28, I called her with trembling excitement. There was a pause on the line. Well, she said finally. I suppose that's the next step. No congratulations. No joy. Just acknowledgement that I'd checked another box in life's predetermined sequence. The pregnancy was difficult from the start. Severe morning sickness kept me bedridden for weeks. Patricia sent flowers once, a sterile arrangement from an expensive florist that wilted within days. When I lost the baby at 12 weeks, I called her from the hospital bed, sobbing. These things happen, she said, her voice steady and clinical. You're young. There will be others. The second pregnancy ended the same way. This time, I didn't call her immediately. I needed space to grieve without her detached efficiency contaminating my pain. David held me while I cried, stroking my hair and whispering that we'd get through this together. His mother flew in from Ohio, bringing homemade soup and staying for a week just to take care of us. Patricia sent a card. Thinking of you during this difficult time. Love, Mother. Love. As if it were a signature line she'd forgotten to customize. I started therapy, working through the layers of disappointment and confusion that had built up over the years. Dr. Martinez helped me see the patterns. How I'd spent my entire life trying to earn something that was never actually available. Some parents love conditionally, she explained during one session. They withhold affection until you meet their standards. But what you're describing sounds different. It's like your mother operates from a place where emotional connection simply isn't accessible to her. I thought about Patricia's garden. How she could nurture plants with infinite patience but couldn't remember my birthday without a calendar reminder. The third pregnancy felt different from the beginning. Stronger. More settled. David and I were cautious with our hope, but as weeks turned to months, we began to believe this baby would make it. 20 weeks, we found out we were having a girl. I called Patricia with the news, my voice bright with possibility. A girl, she repeated. How lovely. I was wondering, I said, gathering courage. Would you like to help me set up the nursery? Maybe we could choose some plants for the windowsill, something safe for babies. Oh, Charlotte. I'm sure you'll manage just fine. I have the landscape architect coming next week to discuss the fall plantings. The conversation lasted 3 more minutes. She asked about my health in the same tone she might inquire about the weather, then shifted to describing her plans for a Japanese meditation garden in the northeast corner of her property. That night, I sat in what would become Emma's room, painting the walls a soft lavender. David found me there hours later, brush in hand, tears streaming down my face. She doesn't know how to love me, I whispered. And I don't think she ever will. He knelt beside me, taking the brush gently from my hands. Then we'll love this baby. Enough for both grandmothers, he said. Emma arrived on a crisp October morning, perfect and healthy and absolutely beautiful. The moment they placed her in my arms, something shifted in my universe. This tiny person depended on me completely, trusted me absolutely, and I felt a fierce protective love unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Patricia came to the hospital 2 days later, bringing an elaborate floral arrangement that the nurses had to move to make room for medical equipment. She held Emma for exactly 90 seconds, commented on her good color, and handed her back. The flowers are from the garden, she said. Late season blooms. They won't last long. I stared at her, holding my daughter close. Neither will anything else, I said quietly. She didn't understand what I meant. But I did. For the first time in my life, I had someone who needed my love more than I needed hers. That night, watching Emma sleep in the hospital bassinet, I made a decision. I would break the cycle. This little girl would never wonder if she was enough. She would never have to earn love that should be freely given. Patricia visited once more in Emma's first month, arriving unannounced while I was breastfeeding on the couch, exhausted and still in pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. You look tired, she observed, settling into David's reading chair without being invited. New babies don't sleep much, I said, adjusting Emma's blanket. Perhaps you should consider a night nurse. The Weatherbys used one for both their children. Worked out beautifully. I looked at my mother, sitting stiff-backed in her tailored coat, suggesting I outsource the very connection I'd been craving my entire life. I want to do it myself, I said. Suit yourself. She checked her watch. I can't stay long. The bulb planting starts at 4. She left 30 minutes later, kissing Emma's forehead with the same mechanical affection she might show a neighbor's pet. As autumn shifted into winter, my focus narrowed to Emma's needs and my own healing. David returned to work, and I settled into the rhythm of new motherhood. The sleepless nights, the constant feeding, the way Emma's entire face lit up when she saw me, it was exhausting and perfect and everything I'd dreamed it would be. Patricia called occasionally, asking brief questions about Emma's health and development. But she never asked how I was feeling or if I needed anything. When I tried to share stories about Emma's milestones, her first smile, the way she tracked movement with her eyes, Patricia listened politely but offered little response. Babies develop at their own pace, she'd say. Nothing to get excited about yet. The yet always stung. As if Emma's existence was still somehow provisional. By spring, I realized the calls were becoming shorter and less frequent. Patricia's interest seemed to wane as Emma became more active and demanding. She preferred the abstract idea of grandmotherhood to its messy reality. The withdrawal happened gradually, like pulling a thread from a sweater. So slow that at first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. It started with missed calls. Patricia had always been punctual about returning phone calls within hours. Suddenly, days would pass before I heard back. When she did call, her tone was hurried, distracted. Sorry, darling. The garden center delivered the wrong azalea varieties. Crisis management mode. Then came the cancelled visits. She'd agreed to come see Emma, confirm the time, and call an hour before with an emergency. The irrigation system needed repair. An unexpected frost threatened her delicate plantings. A magazine photographer wanted to reschedule. Each excuse was reasonable on its own. Together, they formed a pattern of calculated distance. I started testing the boundaries, making plans weeks in advance to see if commitment time would make a difference. It didn't. Patricia could find a gardening crisis to match any timeline David noticed first. "When's the last time your mom held Emma?" he asked one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. I paused, thinking back. "Her last visit. 3 weeks ago. And before that?" The math was uncomfortable. Patricia had spent less than 2 hours total with her granddaughter in Emma's first 6 months of life. "Maybe she's adjusting," I said, but the words felt hollow. That weekend, I decided to drive up to Westchester unannounced. Emma was teething and cranky, and I thought maybe being around family, even emotionally distant family, might help both of us. I found Patricia in her greenhouse, repotting orchids with scientific precision. She looked up when I knocked, and, for just a second, something like irritation flashed across her face before settling into polite surprise. "Charlotte, you didn't call." "I wanted to surprise you," I said, adjusting Emma's car seat. "And I thought you might like to spend some time with Emma." Patricia wiped her hands on a pristine towel and approached us cautiously, as if we were carrying something contagious. "She's grown," she observed. 6-month-old babies tend to do that." Emma chose that moment to start fussing, the kind of tired, overstimulated crying that meant we needed quiet and comfort. I lifted her from the car seat, bouncing gently and making soft shushing sounds. Patricia stepped back. "Perhaps this isn't the best time," she said. "I have 12 rare orchids in various stages of transplant. They can't be left." I stared at her. "Mom, I drove an hour to see you. You should have called first." Emma's crying intensified, and I felt my own composure starting to crack. Here I was, exhausted from months of round-the-clock caregiving, reaching out for connection, and my mother was choosing flowers over her granddaughter. "Can't the orchids wait 20 minutes? I asked. "Transplant shock is a serious concern," Patricia replied. "Timing is critical." I looked around the greenhouse. Hundreds of plants in perfect health, thriving under her meticulous care. She had infinite patience for root systems and growth cycles, but couldn't tolerate a crying baby for long enough to offer help. "Okay," I said quietly. "I understand." I strapped Emma back into her car seat and left without another word. The drive home was a blur of tears and realizations. Patricia wasn't struggling to connect with Emma. She wasn't adjusting to grandmotherhood or learning how to love differently, she simply didn't want to. That night, I called my college roommate Sarah, who lived in California with her 2 young sons. I told her about the greenhouse incident, trying to keep my voice steady. "Charlotte," she said gently. "What are you hoping to get from her?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't know. Something. Anything. What if she just doesn't have it to give?" I'd been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of wondering why my mother couldn't love the way I needed, I should have been asking whether I was willing to keep sacrificing my peace for connection that would never come. Over the following weeks, I stopped initiating contact. No more planned visits or phone calls. I waited to see if Patricia would reach out. She didn't. 2 months passed in blessed silence. Emma thrived in our small, loving household. David's parents visited frequently, bringing energy and joy and the kind of grandparent enthusiasm I dreamed about. Emma giggled when David's father made silly faces, fell asleep in his mother's arms, and seemed to sense the abundance of love surrounding her. I started to feel lighter, less tense. The constant low-level anxiety that came from managing Patricia's emotional unavailability began to fade. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Patricia's voice on the phone was different. Warmer. Almost maternal. "Charlotte. Darling. I've been thinking about you and Emma constantly. I realize I've been distant, and I want to make amends." I gripped the phone tighter, Emma sleeping peacefully in my lap. "What do you mean?" "I'd like to take you both to lunch tomorrow. The country club has a lovely new garden terrace, and I thought Emma might enjoy the fresh air." This was the invitation I'd been craving for months. The acknowledgement. The effort. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to rush toward this unexpected opening, but something felt off. Patricia didn't do spontaneous. She didn't do warm phone calls or sentimental gestures. "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "What brought this on? Can't a grandmother want to spend time with her granddaughter?" The word grandmother sounded strange in her mouth, like she was trying on a new accent. We met the next day at the club's garden restaurant. Patricia arrived looking elegant as always, wearing a soft blue dress that complemented her carefully maintained blonde hair. She hugged me, actually hugged me, and cooed over Emma with enthusiasm that seemed slightly rehearsed but genuine. "Enough. She's gotten so big," Patricia exclaimed, reaching for Emma with steady hands. "And those eyes. So alert." Emma, now 7 months old and more social, actually smiled at Patricia. For a moment, I felt hope bloom in my chest. Maybe this was real. Maybe she was finally ready to be the grandmother I'd wanted her to be. Lunch was pleasant. Patricia asked thoughtful questions about Emma's development, admired photos on my phone, and even laughed when Emma grabbed for her water glass with determined baby fingers. "I owe you an apology," she said as we shared dessert. "I know I've been preoccupied. The garden renovations have consumed so much energy. But family should come first." I nodded, afraid to speak and break whatever spell was making this possible. "In fact," Patricia continued, "I'd love to have you both stay for the weekend sometime soon. I've been thinking about setting up a proper nursery in the guest room. Somewhere Emma can be comfortable when you visit." This was everything I'd wanted to hear. The words I'd been waiting for my entire life. "That would be wonderful," I said. Over the following weeks, Patricia called regularly. She asked about Emma's sleep schedule, her favorite foods, whether she was crawling yet. She sent thoughtful gifts, a beautiful hand-knitted blanket, organic baby food from an expensive specialty store, wooden toys that looked like they belonged in a museum. When Emma's first birthday approached, Patricia insisted on hosting the party. "The garden will be perfect in September," she said. "We can set up tables on the lawn, maybe a small tent in case of rain. I want this to be special." I should have been thrilled. Instead, something nagged at me. The timing felt too convenient. The enthusiasm too sudden. But I pushed the doubts aside, telling myself I was being paranoid. The party planning became Patricia's new obsession. She called daily with updates about decorations, catering options, guest list considerations. She wanted to invite her entire social circle, people who had never met Emma, who barely knew I existed. "It's important to introduce Emma to the community," she explained. "These relationships matter as she grows up." I suggested keeping it small. "Family and close friends." Patricia's face clouded. "Charlotte, this is a milestone celebration. We want to do it properly." There was something in her tone. A subtle edge that reminded me of childhood moments when my preferences were politely but firmly overruled. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't identify what. Patricia had been attentive, generous, everything I'd wanted. So why did I feel anxious instead of grateful? I found David in his study, reading. "Do you think my mom seems different lately?" I asked. He looked up. "Different how?" "Too different. Like she's trying too hard." David closed his book. "You've wanted her attention for months. Now you have it, and you're suspicious?" He was right. I was being ungrateful. My mother was finally making an effort, and I was looking for problems. The party day dawned perfect: clear skies, mild temperature, gentle breeze. Patricia had transformed her garden into something magical. White tent with fairy lights. Tables covered in pink linens. Flower arrangements that could have graced a royal wedding. Emma looked adorable in the dress Patricia had chosen, an expensive confection of ivory silk and delicate embroidery that cost more than my monthly groceries. The guests began arriving at 11. Patricia's friends, all perfectly groomed and politely enthusiastic about meeting the birthday girl. They complimented Patricia on the decorations, the food, the beautiful setting. "Patricia, this is absolutely stunning," gushed Mrs. Henderson. From the garden club. "You've outdone yourself." "Only the best for my granddaughter," Patricia replied, beaming. I noticed she said, "my granddaughter," not our granddaughter, or Emma. As the afternoon progressed, I felt increasingly like a supporting character in Patricia's performance. She held Emma for photos, narrated stories about planning the party, accepted compliments on her hosting skills. When it came time to open gifts, Patricia positioned herself prominently in all the photos. She guided Emma's hands toward ribbons, described each present to the assembled crowd, and made sure the photographer captured her involved grandmother moments from every angle. "This is going in the Christmas card," she announced, posing with Emma and an elegant toy horse. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about Emma's birthday. This wasn't about building a relationship or making amends. This was about Patricia's image. Her reputation. The story she wanted to tell about herself as a devoted grandmother. Emma was a prop in her carefully curated narrative. I watched the rest of the party with new eyes, seeing how Patricia orchestrated every moment for maximum visual impact. How she dismissed Emma when the baby got cranky, handing her back to me with a little laugh about naptime drama. How she steered conversations toward her own parenting philosophy and her beautiful garden setting. That evening, after the guests left and the caterers cleaned up, Patricia pulled me aside. "I want to talk about Emma's future," she said. "Her education, her opportunities. I've been thinking about what I can offer." My heart sank. "Here it comes. I'd like to set up a trust fund," Patricia continued. "Something substantial. But I want to be involved in the decisions about her schooling, her activities. I want to make sure she's raised with proper values." "What kind of involvement?" I asked carefully. "Well, there are certain standards. Certain expectations that come with the Hawthorne name. I want to ensure Emma understands her heritage. Translation: I want control. Patricia, I said slowly. Emma's last name is Matthews. She's not a Hawthorne. My mother's face hardened slightly. Of course. But she's still my granddaughter. And I have resources that could benefit her enormously. If we can work together. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Cooperate with my vision, or lose access to the opportunities one can provide. I thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully upstairs, completely unaware that her love was being negotiated. Like a business transaction. I need to think about it, I said. Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, darling. Take your time. The trust fund conversation haunted me for days. Patricia had made her position clear: she wanted to be the primary influencer in Emma's life, using financial leverage to ensure compliance with her vision. But what vision? What exactly did Patricia want from my daughter? I got my answer sooner than expected. Patricia called the following week with an invitation to lunch, just the two of us. Adult conversation, she said. Planning for Emma's future. We met at her favorite restaurant, an understated place where the waitstaff knew her by name and the clientele spoke in hushed, important tones. Patricia ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. I've been giving serious thought to Emma's development, she began once the server left. And I have some concerns. What kind of concerns? Your lifestyle choices. The neighborhood you live in. The influences Emma will encounter. I set down my water glass carefully. What are you talking about? Brooklyn, Charlotte. It's fine for young people starting out. But Emma deserves better. She should grow up with access to the right schools, the right social connections. She's 1 year old. These things start early. Foundation building. Patricia reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. I've been researching preschools in Westchester. The waiting lists are extensive, but I have connections. She slid a brochure across the table. The Hawthorne Academy has an excellent reputation. Very selective. They focus on classical education and proper social development. I stared at the glossy pamphlet. This is a boarding school. Not full boarding until age 7. But they do offer extended day programs for working parents. The implications were staggering. Patricia wanted Emma in her world, under her influence, away from me for the majority of her waking hours. I work from home, I said. I don't need extended day care. Charlotte. Patricia's voice took on the patient tone she used when explaining obvious things to slow people. You can't be everything to that child. She needs structure. Proper guidance. I can provide that. From whom? You. From qualified professionals. Teachers who understand how to shape young minds appropriately. I thought about Emma at home, babbling happily as she played with simple toys, lighting up when I walked into the room. The idea of sending her away for 10 hours a day to be properly shaped made me physically sick. I'm not interested, I said. Firmly. Patricia's expression shifted. The warm grandmother mask slipped, revealing something colder underneath. I see. And how exactly do you plan to afford Emma's future without assistance? Private school tuition? College preparation? The opportunities that will set her apart? We'll manage. Will you? David's salary is comfortable, but hardly exceptional. Your part-time consulting work barely covers childcare costs you don't currently have. What happens when Emma needs real advantages? The question stung because they contained grains of truth. David and I weren't wealthy. We would struggle to provide the kind of elite opportunities Patricia took for granted, but I looked at my mother across the table. Perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, perfectly empty of genuine warmth, and realized something crucial: advantages without love weren't advantages at all. They were just expensive forms of neglect. We'll manage, I repeated. Patricia studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was different from her previous smiles. Sharper. Of course you will, she said pleasantly. I just hope Emma doesn't suffer for your pride. The lunch continued for another 20 minutes, but the conversation stayed surface level. Patricia had shown her cards. The loving grandmother routine was over. That night, I told David everything. The boarding school brochures. The financial pressure. The thinly veiled threats. She wants to buy Emma, I said, pacing our small kitchen. Just like she bought her way through every other relationship in her life. David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What do you want to do? I thought about Emma's laughter. Her complete trust when I held her. The way she reached for me when she was scared or tired or simply wanted comfort. I want to protect her, I said. From all of it. The next morning, I wrote a letter to Patricia. Not an email. Not a phone call. A handwritten letter on our simple stationery. Dear Mother, after our conversation yesterday, I need to be clear about Emma's future. David and I will be making all decisions about her education, her activities, and her upbringing. While we appreciate your interest in her welfare, we don't need financial assistance that comes with conditions about how we raise our daughter. Emma will know you as her grandmother. She will be respectful and kind when you see each other. But she will not be shaped by your expectations or molded to fit your social requirements. If you'd like to have a relationship with Emma based on love rather than control, we welcome that. If not, we understand. Charlotte, I mailed it the same day, Patricia called 3 days later. Her voice was ice. You're making a mistake, she said without preamble. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. You'll regret this. I already regret waiting so long. She hung up without saying goodbye. In the weeks that followed, I waited for retaliation. Patricia was strategic, and I expected her to find ways to make our decision difficult. Instead, there was silence. No calls. No visits. No birthday cards or holiday gifts. It was as if Emma and I had simply ceased to exist in her world. At first, it stung. The finality of it. The realization that Patricia could walk away from her granddaughter without apparent difficulty, but slowly, something else emerged. Peace. Emma thrived in our small Brooklyn world. She took her first steps in our narrow hallway, said her first words while we read books together on the couch. She played in Prospect Park, made friends at the local library story time, and charmed our neighbors with her bright smile. She never asked about her missing grandmother because she never felt the absence. Her world was full of people who loved her unconditionally. David's parents, our close friends, neighbors who watched her grow with genuine delight. On Emma's second birthday, we had a small party in our backyard. 10 people who truly cared about her, homemade decorations, a cake I baked myself. Emma wore a simple yellow dress that cost $20 and looked radiant. No photographer. No performance. No hidden agendas, just love. 3 years have passed since that final conversation with Patricia. Emma is now 4 years old, confident and joyful and completely unaware that she's missing anything. She asks questions sometimes. Why don't I have a mommy's mommy? I tell her that some families are different sizes, and ours is exactly the right size for us. I've learned things about peace that I never understood before. How silence can be a gift instead of a punishment. How choosing your battle sometimes means choosing not to battle at all. Last month, I received a card in the mail. My name and address written in Patricia's careful handwriting. Inside, a generic sympathy card, thinking of you during this difficult time. For a moment, I was confused. No one had died. No tragedy had occurred. Then I realized, this was Patricia's way of acknowledging what she saw as the death of our relationship. Her final word. I threw the card away without finishing it. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that some people cannot love the way we need them to. Not won't. Cannot. The wiring simply isn't there. Patricia could nurture plants because plants don't require emotional reciprocity. They just need consistent care and proper conditions. People, especially children, require something more complex. Something Patricia has never possessed. I think about the patterns I've broken. The cycles that won't continue. Emma will never question whether she's lovable because her love has never been conditional. She'll never perform for affection because affection flows freely in our home. Sometimes I wonder if Patricia thinks about Emma. If she sees children in her garden and remembers her granddaughter exists. If she feels anything resembling regret. Mostly, I don't wonder. It doesn't matter anymore. David and I are planning Emma's 5th birthday party. It will be small again, filled with people who genuinely celebrate her existence. We'll probably have it in the park, with pizza and store-bought cake and all the chaotic joy that comes with children playing together. Emma is excited about kindergarten starting in the fall. She's curious about everything, kind to everyone she meets, and absolutely certain that she's loved. When she runs to me with scraped knees or exciting discoveries, there's no hesitation in her movements. She knows I'll be there. That's the real inheritance I'm giving her. Not money or connections or social advantages. Certainty. The bone-deep knowledge that she matters simply because she exists. I think about all the years I spent trying to earn Patricia's love. The energy I wasted hoping she would change. The pain I carried believing I wasn't enough. None of it was about me. It was never about me. Some people plant gardens. Others plant families. The skills don't always transfer. I've chosen to plant something different for Emma. Not perfect, but real. Not impressive from the outside, but warm and safe and completely hers. On quiet evenings, when Emma is asleep and David is reading and our small home feels like the center of the universe, I understand what I've gained by letting go of freedom from expectations that were never going to be met. Peace from accepting what is instead of mourning what should have been. Joy from focusing on the love that exists instead of chasing the love that doesn't. Emma will grow up knowing she's treasured. Not for what she achieves or how she performs, but for who she is. She'll never have to wonder if her mother's love comes with conditions because it never will. That's worth more than any trust fund. More than elite schools or social connections or impressive garden parties. It's worth everything. The story ends here, in this small kitchen, with this small family. Living a deliberately unremarkable life filled with extraordinary love. Some inheritances skip generations. Some patterns take decades to break. Some peace only comes when you stop fighting for something that was never really possible. I've stopped fighting, started building. And in the quiet space where struggle used to live, something better has grown, something that will last longer than any garden. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful choice we can make is knowing when to walk away. Sometimes love means protecting what matters most, even from family. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult places. And remember, your worth has never been conditional, no matter who tried to make you believe otherwise. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.